The discovery of those strange geometric shapes on Mars had already shaken the foundations of what humanity believed about the red planet. But as the days turned into weeks, and NASA's rover kept transmitting images back to Earth, the enigma only grew darker, deeper, and far more unsettling, because those shapes were not random at all. Their precision was chilling, almost unnatural. And the scientists locked inside the control rooms began to whisper about possibilities they had long buried under the weight of scientific skepticism. And yet, here it was, undeniable, carved into the barren Martian soil and rocks like a language lost before time. And when the rover rolled closer, its cameras focusing on an arrangement of hexagonal tiles that seemed to interlock like a puzzle, the tension in the NASA headquarters reached a breaking point. As if the people watching were witnessing not just alien architecture but a message that had been waiting billions of years to be read, and still, no one dared to speak it aloud, because how could humanity accept that Mars, the lifeless red desert, may have once been home to an intelligence beyond our comprehension? But then something happened that shattered the thin line between curiosity and fear. The rover, following its automated route, detected a faint vibration beneath its wheels, as though the ground itself was humming. And sensors showed rhythmic pulses radiating from the heart of the geometric formation, pulses so regular, so exact, that they could not be natural phenomena. And one of the lead engineers, his voice trembling, muttered that it was a signal, a coded heartbeat of something lying dormant under the surface, waiting. And in that moment, silence swallowed the entire control room. For they knew they were no longer exploring Mars, they were trespassing on something far older and far more powerful. And as the rover's instruments picked up these signals, a strange interference began affecting communications. With static, whispers, and patterns of light flickering across the transmission screens, as if the rover had become a bridge between two worlds, the world of men and the forgotten world of something not human. And as data analysts tried to decode the pulses, they realized the pattern mirrored sacred geometries known on Earth, from the pyramids of Giza to the mandalas of ancient India. And suddenly the scientists began to argue, voices rising, some insisting that this proved a universal order, binding civilizations across galaxies, others claiming it was pure coincidence. But the more they argued, the clearer the signals became, almost as if the unknown presence beneath Mars was listening, feeding on their attention, shaping itself through their fear. And while the world outside NASA remained oblivious, inside the walls of that control center the realization dawned that this was no discovery. It was contact. Though contact with what? No one dared to answer, for if the shapes were indeed messages, then who had carved them? And more terrifyingly, who was still speaking through them? Because late that night, when most of the staff had gone home, a junior scientist remained behind, staring at the live feed from the rover, and he swore he saw the angles of the geometric shapes shift, subtly, almost imperceptibly, like a puzzle rearranging itself, and he recorded the footage, replaying it again and again, unable to shake the feeling that the formations were aware of being observed. And as the hours passed, he noticed something else. Hidden within the hexagons and triangles, a larger symbol was forming, a spiral, the oldest and most universal sign of infinity, of life cycles, of portals. And when he reported it the next day, the higher officials silenced him, ordering secrecy. But rumors leaked anyway, whispers across coffee tables and encrypted forums, until conspiracy theorists began to claim that NASA was hiding proof of ancient Martian civilizations. But what the public didn't know, what NASA kept locked behind levels of clearance, was that the rover's drill had been activated near one of the central formations, boring into the Martian soil. And what it found was not rock, it was hollow, a cavity stretching deep underground, echoing with that same pulsing hum. And inside the cavity the cameras caught a glimpse of something metallic, impossibly smooth, covered in patterns that mirrored the surface shapes, as though the geometry above was merely a map to the labyrinth below. And the discovery terrified the administration, because if there was a constructed chamber beneath the surface, then Mars was not merely shaped by wind and dust, but by hands, by intelligence. And the implications were shattering, because what if those hands were still here, watching, waiting for humanity to finally dig deep enough to awaken them? And the hum grew louder each day, synchronized with the rover's proximity, until one evening, transmissions from the rover suddenly cut off, replaced by a single image frozen on the screens at NASA, a perfect circle glowing faintly against the Martian dust, like an eye staring straight into the human soul. and as the engineers scrambled to restore contact, that image refused to fade, and some claimed they could hear, within the static, whispers in a language that no human tongue had spoken, and yet everyone in the room understood the meaning in their bones. That Mars was not dead, that something within it had always been alive, geometric, patient, and waiting for the moment when humans would finally see. And in that moment, the true terror was not that life once existed on Mars, but that it never ended, and that maybe, just maybe, Earth had been worn long ago through its own ancient monuments, its pyramids, its stone circles, but humanity had failed to listen, and now, standing on the edge of revelation. The question was not whether we were alone in the universe, but whether we were safe, because the more the shapes shifted, the more they seemed to converge into a single, terrifying truth, that Mars itself was a construct, a machine wearing the mask of a planet, and the rover had just knocked on its door. The silence that followed the initial revelation of the geometric structures on the Martian surface was soon replaced by a storm of questions, theories, and debates that reached far beyond the halls of NASA and spilled into universities, media houses, and late-night conversations among ordinary people who had always wondered whether Mars could hold secrets older than humanity itself. And as the rover continued its cautious trek across the barren landscape, its high-resolution cameras and sensors capturing every angle of these strange geometric designs etched into the rusty soil and protruding out of weathered rock, scientists began to notice patterns that were not only unusual but eerily familiar. Because the shapes, perfect triangles, hexagons, and circles interlocked with astonishing precision, resembled symbols carved into ancient human civilizations on Earth. From the pyramids of Egypt to the Nazca lines of Peru, from Mesopotamian ziggurats to mysterious stone carvings in forgotten jungles, and the chilling realization struck some researchers that perhaps Mars was not just a dead planet waiting to be studied but a silent archive of something, or someone, that had left a message for whoever came after. And while most of the public saw these images as fascinating curiosities, a group of mathematicians and cryptographers locked themselves away in dimly lit labs, poring over the angles and alignments of the Martian formations, because when they superimposed these patterns on maps of constellations visible from Mars, the symbols aligned almost perfectly with the Orion Belt and Pleiades cluster, suggesting that the shapes were not random geological quirks but a kind of celestial map, a message inscribed into the dust of another world. And yet, as compelling as the evidence seemed, skeptics insisted that human imagination was prone to finding order in chaos, to seeing patterns where none existed. But the problem with that argument was that the rover's instruments did not merely detect shapes. They revealed depth, structure, and alignment too precise to be dismissed, with stones arranged in angles measurable to fractions of degrees, trenches carved in parallel like laser-cut grooves, and most unsettling of all, a massive hexagonal slab, half buried under red sand, its edges so sharp it appeared machined, not weathered, as though it had been intentionally placed, waiting to be uncovered. And when the rover transmitted a series of ground-penetrating radar scans beneath the slab, scientists froze at the data. Beneath the surface, extending deep into the crust of Mars, was a vast hollow chamber, rectangular in design, stretching far wider than any natural cave could form. A chamber whose echoing void suggested emptiness, yet whose walls reflected signals back with metallic strength, almost as if an ancient structure, a facility, was hidden there. And suddenly the geometric shapes on the surface were no longer just symbols or carvings, they were markers, entrances, warnings, or invitations into something buried for millions of years, something waiting in silence until humanity was advanced enough to find it.